and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services people for helping with actual spraying and mowing. And then finally, everybody at the Wetland Ecology Lab with help from Insight to data collection and helping me keep my sanity sometimes. So, thank you very much. Any questions?
Who's going to be collecting the data on the next go around?
Christine will this year.
Okay.
After that, I don't
Lucky
know.
you.
Yeah, Christine is taking over Chad's plots and her plots this year. She's going to
Good.
need a lot of help, so we're
Okay.
hoping there'll be some cooperation. And then we have a new student, Rachel Hager, who just got a fellowship actually, and the first year of her fellowship will be the last year of data collection on their projects.
Good.
So, but she
And
will
they
be.
will be needing help.
We'll be there to help.
Getting
Yeah.
2 sites.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Frank.
How much of the initial reduction in frag cover do you think is just due to the mowing?
Really not that much. I didn't measure that, but most studies have shown that after the initial treatment, you're looking at minimum 80% live Phragmites removal. And most of my plots, I was seeing that 85 to 93, I believe. It's just that the stuff popping back after the initial treatment and even after that second year of treatments. If you think about or can imagine how extensive the rhizome system underneath the ground is, in some cases, and this is an extreme case, but it has been found that 80% of the biomass of this plant can be under the ground. Now you think about this plant's 10 feet tall, how many stems per square meter, but then 80% of it's below the ground. I mean, that's just crazy. So it is very resilient, it holds a lot of resources, and it's just really hard to kill all that after 1, even after 2 years.
One comment, I'm excited to see what your results are and what has happened, and to me, it's kind of mirroring what we've seen over the years with your year 1 treatment, year 2 treatment, and I'm really excited to see what the year 3 treatment brings in, because we've seen that same cyclic
Right.
that you're seeing there, and I guess the other important thing is that I want to stress is the 5-year window of research is kind of a minimum, especially when you're dealing with frag, because you're not really seeing these results long-term, or even short-term, for about that 5-year period. So, and I appreciate Mike's support over there for helping us hang on for 5 years.
Yeah, definitely.
But on any time you're studying Phragmites, I mean, minimum, it should be 5 years, and anything we can stretch beyond that, you know, even just going back periodically to monitor it, will give us a lot better understanding in the field on where we're headed with our exercise that we're doing.
Yeah.
As somebody who's not very involved in Phragmites management, I don't know why burning is such a minimized thought. I mean, I suppose there are particulates, there's an air budget, an air quality budget.
Yeah, so we just had a Phragmites working group meeting this morning with FFSL and had some of the fire guys come in and talk to us. Basically, it's air quality, the amount of urban areas around the Great Salt Lake, and just getting that window of the right air quality, the right weather conditions, and then even when you get that, having people call and say, nope, you're not doing it today. So it's really, really tough. And we've actually had several areas that we've kind of just been sitting on our hands over the past couple of years, waiting to try and get a burn. And now we have to go back and kind of start over. So we really need to start pushing to try and find better ways to deal with them. Dang.
Have you looked at the seed bank at all within any of your sites to see if it's a germination issue or getting seeds their issue? And the second kind of part to that is, are all your sites totally surrounded by more frag?
Great question. The first part of that question, I'm going to direct everybody to Christine Rahal. She is actually she took seed bank samples and doing a large greenhouse study to see what's going on there. Yeah, I wish I could have done that with mine. There's a lot of stuff I know Karen wished I could have done, and I think she got sick of me saying, no, I don't have time.
You got a lot of areas.
You got a lot done.
But I'm just wondering, like, opportunity-wise, you know, if most of these areas are within stands of frag,
They are,
then
they
it
are.
might make it recruitment all the harder versus if you had like on an edge.
Correct. So that Phragmites cover graph may be a little bit, the Phragmites cover could have been a little bit lower, say, if I was on the edge of some of these plots, you know, but again, that's something I didn't measure, so I can't say for sure.
No, I guess I meant the plots themselves are surrounded by
Yes,
more
they
Phragmites,
are.
and so
That
there's
would
not a
help
lot of
facilitate.
native moving in necessarily.
Exactly. Now, one thing we have seen when we were able to burn with some of the data that Randy Berger's been collecting is that we were able to burn it and get it down to bare soil. We were seeing a lot of native
Yeah.
plants coming back. So it seems like that seed bank is there.
We saw the same thing in our mitigation when we've been burning for about 3 years, and we got a lot of native stuff coming back on, so.
Any other questions?
Or do you want to just say what you found in the
Oh,
seed
yeah,
bank?
as far as what I found so I have looked at seed banks at a variety of sites across the Great Salt Lake, and they all have some degree of native species, but I would say I have sites at the Nature Conservancy in Bear River, which have more native species surrounding my plots, and so I would say you see higher density of the natives there, but even at Farmington Bay and Ogden Bay, which are in, my plots are in seas of Phragmites, you still get a significant amount of natives, so,
And viable seed.
and viable
Yeah.
seeds, right?
I mean, one thing about the wetland seeds here, I mean, they can sit under the mud for a long time. It's just a matter of how many's there compared to
Yeah.
Phragmites seeds now, so.
So Chad, I had another question about it. In terms of getting rid of all the stuff that's left after you mow, could you burn it?
You could, yes,
Say
you
maybe
can.
So would
It's
there be
just,
less, would there be less of an issue with burning that sort of a low, cool fire than, you know, because
I
I
gotcha,
have seen
yeah.
when Howard has burned and it turns on Brigham City and you just have stuff falling out of the
Oh, yeah.
sky. It's a black snowstorm.
even Burns, you know, is before I was at Ogden Bay, but I've heard stories, Burns at Ogden Bay and ash falling clear up in Roy next to the freeway.
So I'm wondering if the mowed stuff would burn differently than the standing.
It probably would. What I learned this morning that I didn't know is that there's actually a little bit less restrictions on what they call pile burning. But still, if it's over, I can't remember the figure.
28,
20 acres.
Over 20 acres, you still have to go through all the permitting and stuff that we do right now. So it probably does burn differently, but it's still, we just can't get around it.
Utah Lake did some of that low-level burning, where they rolled it and then burned it. And what it does, I mean, it does two things. One is it drops your flame rate down to where you control it better, but you're still basically burning the same amount of biomass, with the exception of when it's laying down, it doesn't burn as clean. Yeah, I mean, it'll burn through 2 or 3 layers, and then it just pretty much puts itself out. So you get a little less smoke, but not significant. But it's much safer.
Yeah.
You know, and what they did is around their housing units, they would actually lay it down, use that as a partial fire break where they could drop the flame length from 30 or 40 feet in the air down to about a 6-foot level, and then try to put it out.
You have a question, Nick?
I was just wondering, the South Shore Duck Clubs, I mean, they can burn whenever they want.
Kinda.
I mean, because I see them burning all the time. But
So the permit is you have to burn under 20 acres to be under this de minimis rule is what they called it.
And you on 100 acres.
Oh, typically our burns are anywhere from 150 up to 1,200 acres. The largest burn we did was Unit 1 at Ogden Bay. It was 1,200 acres at once. That was quite the fire. But even a 100-acre burn in Phragmites is a very large fire. I think there was a question back here.
A few years ago, I heard, I think it was Natural Resource Conservation Service was looking into possible projects for biomass, so some sort of energy generation from the Phragmites, but I don't know whatever happened.
I'm not sure either. I know Randy works and talks to a lot of people about that stuff. Back in the UK and Europe, they are actually pellet harvesting it, pelletizing it, and using it as fuel. And I don't know if there's any of that going on here.
There's Canada's the closest place where they're doing it right now. They're actually pelletizing it in a different grass. Using it, they have to have a special boiler because of the silica makeup within the frag, but they've got them. They use it as a fuel source for greenhouses in different places. In Europe now, they're using them in a number of places, and they have a little different process of pelletizing. They use it a lot for thatch roofs. I mean, that's a multi-million-dollar industry in Europe. There's also, we had some biofuel testing done here in Salt Lake, North Salt Lake. They can make basically a biofuel out of it, closer to diesel fuel. But unfortunately, Dr. Hanks died, who was spearheading that, and we're hoping somebody else comes in and picks that up. And then in Chicago, I think, right now, they're actually bringing a machine in to start harvesting Phragmites in order to do, again, biofuel, mixing it with cow manure, and trying to enhance that as a use for it. So a lot of areas that they're tweaking right now, but in the US right now, we don't have a good viable market for it. Hopefully it comes.
And one thing I think is good to keep in mind is that these harvesting, mowing, and haying and stuff, and pelletizing, is not going to kill the stuff. It's not going to make it go away. It will open up the area for a year's worth of use. But if you don't keep doing it year after year after year, it's just going to grow right back in. In fact, probably thicker and denser because it is grass and it likes to be cut. But maybe we could use some of these strategies together with our herbicide treatments, you know, try and reduce some of that biomass by cutting it, grazing it, or haying it before we spray it. And then when we mow it, there isn't as much of it there. So it's kind of trying to find the right combination of all these different methods and treatments.
No one's gonna ask.
Or Jeffrey.
I'll throw one out.
Uh-oh.
So on your, on the one graph, you, it showed that the litter depth was getting lower as the year went by, is that correct?
So that wasn't litter depth, that was actual
Or litter volume?
cover, so amount of area that the litter is covering. Does that make sense?
No.
It's not how tall or deep it is, it's how widespread it is.
Okay.
So, yes, it is decreasing. So when we first started, well, that may be forever. When we first started, after the first year of treatments, that little cover was way up there. So basically, it was covering up to 80% or more of that plot. Now it is starting to decrease. It is starting to decompose. It's taken a good 3 years to get it down to under, I think it was about 30% of the area. Is that quick enough for these native plants to start coming back, or is Frag already gonna start coming back before the natives? That's still a question we don't know the answer to.
So follow up on this. So the litter depth seems to be crucial. So as it decomposes or compacts down, is that gonna create a cap against the seed bank that's already there, that they're never gonna break through? This
I don't-
needs to be torn up, or?
I don't think so, because I think once it decomposes, that whole area is gonna open up. Yeah, it does start sinking, but once it sinks all the way, it's gone, right? Or in the water, in these deeper water areas, I didn't have time to get into that, but you've seen it before, where there's more water, it's moving this litter layer around, it's decomposing a little bit faster in those areas. So hopefully, we can start to see some of these native plants come back. In those deeper water areas, we're still seeing low native plant cover, but we're actually seeing a lot of open water habitat in those areas, which we don't mind. That's great for us. Birds love open water habitat. And we're actually starting to see some pond weeds and stuff grow in those areas too.
What is the depth those ponds have to be to prevent?
Well, that's a good question. Just off the top of my head and skimming through the data, it was probably not that much, 10, 12 centimeters of water. And that also depends on how much it's getting crushed, how much you're running over it after you mow it and stuff like that. Is it push it down far enough into the water column? But typically the areas that have deeper water that are looking a lot better as far as this litter cover is concerned, you're looking at 15 centimeters, 20 centimeters of water. So under a foot. Not a lot. Yeah.
So if you had 5 inches of, say, 2-year-old litter, just what would you think would happen if you had the ability to run over it with something like a sheep's foot device, like they use in highway construction? What would be, if you just kind of punch holes in it, what would happen?
Well, and that's actually what we're doing right now. We're actually, Forestry Fire State Lands and the DWR is actually out crushing, I don't know how many thousands of acres right now.
It'll be about close to 3,000 acres.
Yeah. So, and that's because some of the preliminary results that I found was that, yeah, where there's these moister areas, deeper water, the more you can crush it down, the more you can get it down into the soil and the water column, it's breaking up a lot faster. So that's kind of what we're trying out now.
Is that sort of like an even weight, kind of like a smooth roller, like a biscuit roller type of thing that's rolling over them?
Yeah, I haven't actually seen the machine, but they gotta keep.
It's a roller with steel plates welded on a staggered so that it's chopping and actually, part of the specs was we want the stems broke 3 or 4 places in each stem so that it introduces bacteria and moisture into the stem, because it's like bamboo. I mean, nothing gets in, nothing goes out. So once we crush that stem, then we can get more bacteria and hopefully break it down quicker.
I didn't realize you
it
had
is.
that going on, that's pretty interesting.
That just started this summer, or this winter, sorry. Spring, it's almost summer.
It all runs together.
In the hardware stores and the nurseries, they sell a product called Stump Remover, which I believe is just an emulsion of some kind of fungus or fungal spores in water. I'm wondering, could something like that be used to reduce the litter like after mowing?
Maybe, I'm not familiar with the product at all. But we're also against restrictions from the EPA saying these are aquatic approved herbicides, fungicides, stuff like that. And the only 2 that I know of are these 2, glyphosate and imazapyr. Cool, well, thank you.
You're a biologist there?
I'm a biology assistant, so I just have a bachelor's in conservation biology.
If you do ever find something, or even see a live animal you think might be a nutrient,